Things have just heated up to another level as we have another report from Frank Saravalli on the Sidney Crosby front, indicating that Montreal would do quite a lot to land the star. We have to dive into the recent reports about Sidney Crosby and also some talks about what Kyle Dubas is up to in Pittsburgh. But not just that, there is a huge update out of Minnesota as star Kirill Kaprizov has reportedly turned down the biggest extension in NHL history, and the top Minnesota insiders are now speculating that this could potentially lead to a trade. And naturally, with us having a certain Russian, it links Montreal to it to some extent. We got to dive into both of those things, plus much more, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. But we're going to start with a little PTO action. You know, PTO is professional tryouts here heading into rookie camp now, but this is more for training camp. And the Habs did make one. Goaltender Kevin Mandolese, and Kevin Mandolese is not, you know, your superstar goalie, former 6th-round pick. But Jesse, you know, we do have a need for maybe some insurance, as there's been talks going around that Kaiden, he'll probably be waived at some point in training camp to go back down to the minors. This could very well serve, in one case, as Jacob Fowler's backup in Laval if Kaapo Kähkönen gets claimed, or could be an amazing ECHL goalie. A little sneaky move, but again, I think it just goes to that grander theme of Montreal just really making all the right moves to ensure that their depth isn't, you know, completely destroyed at any level.
And really reminds me of the acquisition of Connor Hughes last year, which kind of seemed like a little bit of a depth move till he ended up playing really well in the AHL and really giving us a lot of the support that we need. So, you know, making sure that we have a strong tandem in Laval, it for me is a very, very good decision. And it's really the question of, I think, like, who's going to be Fowler's backup? I think that's really what it comes to. They want to put Fowler in a position to succeed, but they also want to have him with somebody there who has a little bit of experience, considering what such a young goalie is, what such promise he really has. So I feel like that's some of the greater context here in bringing Mandolese in. The Blainville, Quebec native. It went 11-6-0 last year in the AHL, Josh. 903 save percentage. You know, so at least at the AHL, you know, some pretty serviceable numbers there. But again, just making sure like Fowler's like kind of in a position to succeed and kind of having him supported there, I think it's a very strong move for the Laval Rocket, and also for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, always. Like, and even these little small moves, they always mean something, right? So really cool. And hey, for all we know, maybe Kaapo Kähkönen will end up clearing and just being fine to go down there, but you never want to, it's never a certainty. So just love that every move from the front office is calculated. It makes a ton of sense. And hey, like you said, Jesse, this guy could very well come in and be a very serviceable player in the AHL, or like Marc-Olivier Beaudoin pointed out, could be one of the best in the ECHL. So you never really know. Wanted to give a shout out to that down below, but we're getting into the exciting stuff now as things are heating up with training camp just around the corner. The rookie camp coming up now. It started officially, but there is a huge report out of Minnesota that Kirill Kaprizov has turned down the largest contract in NHL history. It was an 8-year, $16 million AAV offer for his extension. And Frank Saravalli, but he wasn't the only one. Also, Michael Russo and Joe Smith, who cover the Minnesota Wild, they confirmed this, said yes, he did turn it down. This has led to a lot of talk, but the main thing here, and this is taken from Russo and Smith's article, if Kaprizov won't entertain a contract extension by the Wild, it could be incumbent on Guerin to get a handful of teams Kaprizov would consider a trade to. And again, this is far from imminent at this point, and this could just be a clause in the contract that Kaprizov didn't like. It could be that he wants a shorter term deal to maximize those career earnings with the cap going up. Fair enough. But Jesse, the fact that we're even talking about a guy like this being on the market, the fact that Habs fans, ourselves included, have said, look, if he makes it to UFA next year, he is one of those top targets, right? Like a McDavid, Kirill Kaprizov is one of the best players in the world. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's too crazy to say that Montreal should at least be keeping an eye on this, because we do have another Russian star here in Ivan Demidov. We just drafted Alexander Zhuravsky, who hurt himself playing basketball. What? But right now, I mean, what was your thought when you read this morning? And do you think there's any path forward where Montreal could make sense for?
It's very interesting. And again, a little bit shocked that somebody's kind of maybe turning down 128 million. Yeah. You have to feel like the first thought is like, okay, it's not about the money. It's about winning and winning long-term, which again, you know, brings up McDavid, like two of the biggest stars in the game right now, Kaprizov and McDavid, for lack of a better term, like they both basically refuse contract extensions here. And you have to feel like it's not on the money. If they feel like they want kind of a foundation where they can have success year over year. And I think there's probably some exciting, you know, kind of elements with the Wild there. But I think it does, you know, kind of perk our ears as Montreal Canadiens fans and media, because we know how this team is set up for having that success over the long term. So I think that's going to do quite a bit to generate that interest from some of the biggest stars around the league going forward. Whether I think that Montreal should make a play on this, Josh, it's like, if we didn't have Ivan Demidov, I would be on this white on rice. Definitely, and even the 16 million, like that, I'm kind of okay with that. Even at that point, but at the same time, like just how like Tampa Bay, how the Tampa Bay Lightning, they only have like that one Nikita Kucherov, and that's all they needed to be kind of those perennial Stanley Cup contenders year after year. I think we only need really one Ivan Demidov on our team, but it's just about kind of surrounding him with the right players. Like our top six is looking really good, I feel, once we're able to get that 2C there. So again, an amazing talent. I'm not saying I don't want Kaprizov on the team. I just think you want to have those complementary talents, and I also want to give the runway for Demidov to be as successful as he can, really coming through without feeling like his minutes would get taken away. Of course, we love Kaprizov, but we're just so big on Demidov and what we feel like he can really do for this team here. So very interesting to keep an eye on, but just so amazing that, we got the way that our team is building up and the players we have right now, we're like, okay, even though obviously this is an amazing player, like we're good with what we have and we feel confident in that.
Yeah, 100%. And I completely agree because also, as much as I would love if I woke up tomorrow, it's the same thing with the Crosby stuff that we'll get into in a minute. If I woke up tomorrow and we had traded for Kirill Kaprizov, awesome, right? You kind of deal with okay, how are we going to make this work? You deal with that after. But again, to get him, Montreal would need to be on his list of teams he wants to go to, and whether the cold weather, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. He does seem to like Minnesota. He's from Russia, so I wouldn't imagine that's a problem. But again, it's about the winning. Whether Montreal's on his list or not, who knows? But at the end of the day, it would cost something to trade for him, even if he only had his list, and then you also have to fork out that 16 million plus. Or you might only get him on a 4 or 5 year deal, right? You never really know, but it's worth keeping an eye on. A crazy update out of Minnesota today. So just keep an eye on it, Habs fans, because, these situations across the league, even if it's not Kaprizov, you never know who might pop up in the next rumor. So keep your eyes and ears open as we're heading into this season. And you know what? We're going to keep on that front because we've been talking a lot about a certain player out of Pittsburgh, and that's Sidney Crosby. And yesterday's video was nuts, of course, with Pat Brisson talking about what's going on with Crosby. Crosby himself having that quote about the city of Montreal. There was a bit of doubling down here today, and there was some interesting talk also yesterday from Pierre Lebrun saying, look, it isn't a Dubas decision. This is from that original article. It will be Crosby and Brisson at the wheel. And it's not just Montreal. There's Crosby's good pal McKinnon, who no doubt would love to have number 87 with him. So again, it is it's not necessarily Dubas, but he would have to still get the package. But today, Frank Saravalli said there is zero doubt the Montreal Canadiens would do anything to get their hands on Sidney Crosby. But the Penguins are in a spot where they're not going to approach their captain. It's going to be up to Crosby. So at the end of the day, it really is up to Crosby, but it seems like the general consensus, not only among fans, but among reporters as well, is Montreal would want him. That smoke is absolutely there. And I think Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton, there is no doubt. They would want Sidney Crosby. Jesse, it all comes down to the price. But now that we're seeing all this doubling down, we're seeing this smoke, I start to wonder how much that price would maybe start to decrease if one day Crosby does do it. Maybe there's an offer that Kent has out there saying, listen, eventually, if you want to come to Montreal, this is what we're willing to pay you, Dubas. And if Sid says he wants to go here, here's what we can offer. And they might not have a choice.
Exactly. Kyle Dubas and Kent Hughes, both of them will basically just need to react if Sidney Crosby does want to move on from the Penguins. Getting back into the playoffs, I think, is that biggest motivation for him. And then it's really, okay, well, where's this the best place to do that? Again, we have to consider what makes this interesting is that Crosby's probably got 3 to 4 more years left, at least, I reckon, of good hockey, left in him. The way that he's taking care of himself, the advances in sports science is really through the roof right now. If there's one guy that I really see still producing well at 42, 43 years old, which sounds wild, it's Sidney Crosby, but he can absolutely do it given what he just produced this very year at 38 years old. You have to feel like getting a little bit more support where he's not having to do everything himself like he has to do in Pittsburgh right now. That would probably just extend his career, which is really just a gift, not only for the Habs, but I think for the Montreal Canadiens. The other important facet to consider in all of this, though, Josh, is that Sidney Crosby would have so much fun playing in Montreal. It wouldn't be lost on him. He would recognize how special it is, not only competing, but just the memories being made and just the environment. Now, why is that? It's because Sidney Crosby loves hockey as much as Montreal loves hockey. And it's very rare where it's like you really have players like that can line up. But that's really when something special happens. Like, he just appreciates the environment. It wouldn't be lost on him. And I think you have to consider that when it's like, okay, it's long retirement coming up. How can I really make the most of the end of my NHL career? And it's hard to argue coming into Montreal, the hype that would just be through the roof. Like, it's hard to imagine just like for the implications of how wild that would be. But like, it's hard to say that like it'd be anywhere better for him to really finish his career, given the upswing of the trajectory that we're on with the Montreal Canadiens. Like, imagine the storyline: Crosby back in the playoffs next year with the Montreal Canadiens. Now, are we maybe getting ahead of ourselves? Is it, maybe greater chance of this not happening? Yes, but the reason we're bringing this up is obviously there's things that are pushing it in the direction just ever so slightly, and it's not enough for me to feel like, okay, like this is really palpable and really close, but like all the signs are getting there. And if this continues, Josh, we're going to have to start taking this like a lot more seriously and getting out our trade packages. It's like, okay, Xhekaj brothers are first. Let's go. Let's get Crosby here in Montreal. More of a little bit of a joke meme there for a trade for Crosby. What's it going to take for you? What would you feel comfortable hypothetically doing?
I mean, like, obviously you can't give up nothing. Well, I mean, I think if Sid is like, listen, I want to go to either Montreal or Colorado and take the best offer, Kyle, if that's the case, then I think Kent will want to give an offer that Colorado maybe couldn't match in terms of young players. And I think we're in a point right now where we have so many good young players, we can afford to give some pretty highly touted guys that are not our top touted guys. Again, like the names in my mind, like Florian Xhekaj is a very interesting name, Jesse. I mean, as much as we want to say like he could be amazing in the future, if it's Sidney Crosby, it's hard to not include him. But like names like Joshua Roy, Owen, Beck, like even a guy like Adam Engstrom, these are kind of guys that I start to think it's like there's no guaranteed path for these guys at this point, but in the right place, there could be. And I think those are the kind of names that I would want to go, again, with some kind of draft capital, but I would not want to give up anything that's, solidly certain in the future. But I want to, again, like you made a good point. He's 38, but like he could have a number of years left. I mean, I don't want to compare him to Gordie Howe and Jaromir Jagr, which was exactly what we were doing before the show. But like, there's a precedent in NHL history for guys playing into their 40s and being effective, and guys who play the game like Sidney Crosby, who think and see the game like Sidney Crosby, who take care of their body like Sidney Crosby. I don't think it's crazy to say he has 4 or 5 years left at a very solid level, but who knows? I mean, it's just something to keep an eye on. Like you said, there's nothing imminent, but I can't help but just keep my eyes open, my ears open for Kaprizov, for Crosby, for anything. Because at this point, I trust the front office. We could really get anything done. But what do you guys think? Leave us your thoughts down below. This is getting crazy, because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.